Alright, so Summer Game Fest 2025 has officially come to an end, and it was definitely a very weird show. Not one of the better SGFs in my opinion, but it definitely just felt kinda odd. Unfortunately, there was nothing in the way of Final Fantasy, but we did get some cool announcements and trailers for the new Onimusha, as well as the long-awaited Resident Evil 9, which will be titled Requiem. So we're going to break that stuff down in today's video. If any of that sounds cool to you, feel free to click the like button. It really does help out and go a long way to support the channel. And if you're new here and you'd like to stick around, you can subscribe and let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Alright, starting off first with the elephant in the room, no Final Fantasy. Square Enix was there, and the game they showed off, honestly, I can't remember the name, but I do recall reading an article a couple of weeks back saying that Square Enix would be partnering with TBS, the TV station, to create some sort of new interactive experience, and whatever that was, that's what we saw at SGF. So, not my cup of tea. Unfortunately, no Final Fantasy, that sucks. And when could these then show up? Well, obviously there is Tokyo Game Show. Square Enix usually has a pretty big presence at those shows, and they usually have something in regards to Final Fantasy there. It's a pretty big event, it's super fun to watch. But then there's also the Game Awards. Now the Game Awards doesn't necessarily line up with what Motomo Toriyama said about getting an update to the remake project by September, but perhaps something in regards to FF9 Remake could be there. And interestingly enough, Nate the Hate, who has become a bit of a reliable source within the gaming industry, said on Twitter, and take this with a grain of salt, that apparently Square Enix is not in a hurry to announce Final Fantasy IX Remake. So maybe they're still working on it, assuming it's real. Maybe they just want to let it cook, and at a later date, maybe the Game Awards or TGS, they'll announce it. Or heck, maybe they'll even do a Square Enix Direct and pack it with FF9, 7 Remake Part 3, Kingdom Hearts 4, Final Fantasy Tactics. That's clearly hopium. But, you know, keep your expectations in check, because when you have low expectations, it's kind of hard to be disappointed. But the wait for new Final Fantasy stuff still continues. This is also a good reminder that I need to head to the store after this video to pick up some more clown makeup because I have seemingly ran out. Now, as for the show, even removing my own expectations, it was just kind of a weird watch. There was some good stuff and a lot of stuff that kind of blended together, but I did want to shout out some of the games that caught my attention, starting off first with Felt That Boxing, which looks insanely funny. The trailer was so charming, had me grinning from ear to ear, and essentially it's a game about puppets. They look like Muppets, but I don't think you can call them Muppets for copyright reasons. But it focuses on an older puppet who's down on his luck. His wife is upset with him, he's a failure to his kids, and he decides to turn to boxing. And he goes through all of the cliche boxing montage training stuff, cleaning toilets, getting his butt whooped, and it leads to fights where it's essentially a modern day Punch-Out. It looks super funny and ridiculous. I'll leave a link in the trailer if you guys would like to check that out. It just looks endlessly funny. Up next, the Wu-Tang clan are getting a new game in the form of Wu-Tang Rise of the Deceiver, and it's going to be presented by Ghostface Killah. And in the story, the Wu-Tang have gone missing, and you gotta find them. It looks like a really interesting action RPG type of game, really interesting art style, but it's the Wu-Tang clan. Who doesn't love Wu-Tang? So I had to mention them, because it looks pretty interesting. Now up next was Onimusha Way of the Sword, with a really great short and sweet trailer that kind of gave me everything I wanted. Story stuff, combat stuff, information on the characters. It looks really, really good. So starting off first with the enemies that we saw in this trailer, those blue soul-sucking bastards are back. They look a little different. I recall in the first Onimusha and the second, they were like a collection of blue skulls. These guys just straight up look like Slimer, but in a blue variant. So they've got one face, and they're here to take all of your hard-earned souls. But hopefully, with the game's combat, it'll be a little bit easier to deal with them. Up next, the return of a red ogre. Now, I don't think this is the same red ogre we defeated in the first Onimusha. I'm pretty sure there's multiple ogres that are smart and can talk, but he does look a lot like that one from the first game. But this guy is named Daidara, and he looks like he's going to be a menace. He may be an enemy that recurs throughout the game, because I don't think we're going to just flat out beat him on our first go. But it's a nice little homage to the first Onimusha. But up next, we have the reveal of a brand new, very interesting, seemingly human villain by the name of Sasaki Gonryu, or Kojiro. So from my understanding, Musashi Miyamoto and Kojiro in real life or in mythic legend were actual nemesis. They had duels. I believe Miyamoto Musashi came out the victor, but again, like Onimusha likes to do, they like to take characters from historical events, put their own Capcom Onimusha twist on them, and then put them in the game. He seems super flamboyant, and I think he's going to be a recurring villain nemesis for us to fight throughout the game. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Gogen Dantis from Onimusha 2, the greatest theater kid of all demons. And he's gonna give Musashi Miyamoto a run for his money with his swordsmanship, and interestingly enough, this is super cool, he also has his own Oni gauntlet. How did he get it? I don't know. I don't even know how Musashi gets his Oni gauntlet. But that's going to be a cool aspect of the story, is figuring out, okay, how can these two guys at the same time have an Oni gauntlet? Is there more to Kojiro? Is he a straight up bad guy? Is he fighting for something bigger? We really don't know, but the idea of him just kind of keeping us as the player on our toes and having him show up throughout the game, almost maybe like a pursuer enemy that blocks our path, sounds super interesting. Now, as far as gameplay goes, I feel like this trailer gives us a little bit of an idea of how the game will play. There seems to be more of a focus on directional combat, almost kind of Arkham-like, but even almost like Onimusha 2, specifically the remaster, where you can pretty much dodge or block or parry an enemy regardless of the direction that you're facing, and we see Musashi do that throughout the trailer. He's surrounded by demons, but he's able to block and parry at will, and it looks super cool. And I think combat in this game is going to be like an upgraded feeling version of what we got in Onimusha 2 and 3. Really letting the player use the environment to their advantage, and I'm really excited to see what more weapons we get. We do see some new weapons show up, or they could be upgraded versions of the weapons we saw in previous trailers, but they look like two golden mallets that have this really cool glass shatter special ability. We see Musashi hit a group of enemies, a big cracked pane of glass shows up. It looks really sick. I'm super intrigued as to what that weapon or its element actually is. There's also a section in the trailer where we see the gauntlet rebuilding a part of the stage that's been destroyed. So I'm guessing the gauntlet might act a little different in this game. Instead of there being seals that you have to unlock or destroy, maybe there's environmental stuff that requires the gauntlet to build some sort of structure that allows Musashi to advance. And at the very end of the trailer, we see this burst of energy from the Oni gauntlet, and it reveals what I'm assuming is a demon woman, a very beautiful demon woman. She might be someone who's helping Musashi on his path, or perhaps is like the physical embodiment of that gauntlet. But either way, Onimusha is looking super sick. I'm enjoying all of these trailers they're putting out. They're giving me everything that I want, and I just can't wait to get my hands on it and actually see a firm release date, because the game is looking sick. So up next, to end the video, we turn our attention to Resident Evil 9, or Resident Evil Requiem as they are going to be calling it. Now, we've all been waiting for this announcement and trailer for a very long time. We knew Capcom was working on a sequel, and truthfully, it really felt like the proper time frame, like enough time had passed to where Capcom would be like, yeah, we've got an update on Resident Evil, here it is. And we got it. But they trolled us in order for us to get it, which didn't sit well with some fans, understandably so. But basically what happened was, about an hour and a half into the show, they had a video package with Maggie Robertson, who was the voice and motion capture actress for Lady D in RE Village. And she is essentially celebrating the franchise because next year will be the 30th anniversary of Resident Evil. 30 years of RE is insane. But anyway, she throws it over to Jun Takeuchi, who is one of the executive producers of Resident Evil over at Capcom, and he's telling us, just wait a little bit longer and you'll get an update on Resident Evil, and then he says something slick about blink and you might miss it. Well, 20 minutes later, they gave us the trailer. So some people were a bit miffed about that, understandably so, but either way, we got a trailer, which is nice. Now, what's funny is the moment this trailer started playing, I knew immediately, oh, it's Resident Evil. And that's because RE Engine games just have a specific look and feel to them. And once you notice it, you can't unnotice it. But either way, we're introduced to who is, I'm assuming, our new protagonist by the name of Grace Ashcroft. Now, you might be wondering, Ashcroft. That sounds kind of familiar. Where have I heard it? Well, if you look back to Resident Evil Outbreak, I believe it's the first one, there was a reporter by the name of Alyssa Ashcroft. Grace is her daughter. Now, funny enough, when I first saw Grace, I thought it was Rose from RE Village. She looked and sounded very, very similar to Rose. I'm like, oh, she's working for the FBI, she changed her name. But no, it's clearly supposed to be somebody new. Anyway, Grace is a technical analyst who's been investigating some murders, and her boss needs her to return to the crime scene of one of the other murders that happened recently. The only problem is that crime scene is where her mother was killed. So she now has to go back to a bombed out Raccoon City to investigate this murder while also facing the past and trauma of her mom. So there could be some really cool stuff there. Also seeing an RE engine Alyssa is nuts. She looks really good. Now, some of the standouts from the trailer, we do see someone sitting in a chair. I've dubbed him the chairman of evilness. We don't know who he is. He could be a big bad. He could be one of the big bads pulling the strings. We don't know, but he's given super mega creepy vibes. We do see a big deformed creature in a hallway, which kind of looks like from what I can tell, it reminds me of like a mold creature mixed with a licker, but it's really, really big, so we don't know what the heck that thing is. We do see a hooded man throughout the trailer. We don't know who they are, but we get some peeks at his skin, and he clearly looks unwell. So I'm assuming it's somebody who might be infected with the virus. It could even be the dude who was sitting in the chair. We honestly don't know. And then of course we do see other creatures who I'm assuming are zombies. So that's a nice return to form. Now, throughout the trailer, we do hear some random voices. Some are male, some are female. I can't place if any of them belong to OG characters. I would assume if characters like Leon come back, it would be Nick Apostolides, and none of these voices sounded like him. There was one female voice that sounded kind of similar to Jill, but that's a kind of big maybe. So I'm not quite sure if any of our OG characters are even going to come back, although I hope they do. We also see Grace tied up and strapped to a table, very, very sweaty, so we don't know what's going on there. But clearly the vibe they're going for is old school Resident Evil survival horror, but they do mention that there will be some set pieces that are kind of more action based. So the vibes are there. This is clearly like rooted in old school scary Resident Evil, but I think the one thing that has me most excited about what we're seeing, and from the story in particular, is that we're going back to Raccoon City, the bombed out, decimated Raccoon City. What on earth could still be there? What monstrosities survived the nuke? How did they evolve and become scarier? I think that could make for some really genuinely frightening moments in the gameplay, as well as seeing these new creatures. And it kind of makes me wonder, since we're headed back to Raccoon City, would there maybe be some open world-esque elements to gameplay, or maybe like biome based? I'm thinking something kind of similar to Silent Hill 2, specifically the remake, where you got to explore most of the town, go into different shops and buildings, because they do show us again the bombed out Raccoon City. So I'm wondering if we can kind of maybe free explore some of those areas while still keeping it maybe kind of linear. But we are headed back to an incredibly legendary location in the RPD building, and we see the outside of it, and we also see the entrance inside with that classic statue, and everything is pretty much in ruins. It's a mess, but some stuff is still left standing, which is pretty cool. Now, the big question I have is, so far, we didn't see or hear any of the OG Resident Evil characters in this trailer, and it makes me question, will anybody come back? I know there were rumors that Leon might be in this game. I also heard some people say Chris might be in the game. We honestly don't know, and we don't even know if those people were reliable. But I would assume if we're headed back to Raccoon City, it would make sense for somebody from one of the first two games to come back. It's such a legendary stomping ground, and not having Leon there, or Chris, or Jill, or even Claire would feel kind of weird and maybe like a missed opportunity, because it is such a classic location where everything started. So maybe there's a chance that someone like Leon is in the game, but they're holding off on his reveal until a little bit later. Although it makes you wonder, if Leon is in the game, why not show him right out the gate? Leon is like the most popular Resident Evil character in the franchise. You'd think you'd want to show him to get people excited, but I could understand if they want to hold off and maybe save him for something bigger, maybe once the game is getting closer to release and they let us know, like, oh hey, by the way, everyone's favorite pretty boy, Leon is back and he's got a beard. Now, the next thing I really want to know is, what is gameplay going to be like? Because with this being a teaser trailer, we didn't really see anything in the way of gameplay, so we don't know if it's going to be first person or third person. Are we even going to be controlling Grace? Is this some sort of weird red herring where they have her be the main character, but we don't actually play as her and we're going to be playing as somebody else? I'm just really excited to see some gameplay stuff, which hopefully we'll get in the coming months. I'm assuming Capcom's probably going to hold some of their own events, or maybe even show up at TGS to reveal more gameplay stuff. Because I do want to see, like, how is Grace going to play? Again, is she the person we're even going to control? How is she going to fight back against what we find lurking in Raccoon City? Because the thing about Resident Evil that's kind of a double-edged sword is that we have these incredibly cool, iconic characters, but they're so iconic and badass that it's hard to put them in really stressful, scary situations, because we know how cool they are and how experienced they are, so we don't really feel that danger for them. So I could see a Leon come back, but we don't play as him. Maybe we just see him do some cool stuff, but they still keep us in control of Grace, so we really feel that fear and that tension. But either way, I'm genuinely really excited to see what they do with this game, because the game's director is the same director of RE7, and that is a man by the name of Koshi Nakanishi. And I'd say about a year ago, during one of Capcom's presentations, when they were talking about the Dead Rising remaster, they interviewed him about Resident Evil 9. And the way he spoke of the game, he sounded really excited, because he felt that what they had found, their core idea for the next Resident Evil, was incredibly exciting.
We're making a new Resident Evil. It was really difficult to figure out what to do after 7. But I found it. And to be honest, it feels substantial.
So remembering that he said that has me really confident that whatever they're doing is going to be super scary, super cool and creepy, but hopefully somewhat revolutionary, because they're really looking to take Resident Evil in a bold new direction, according to the PlayStation blog anyway. And I'm just really curious, what's that hook? What did they find that had them so excited, that made them feel like it was going to refresh Resident Evil? But with that being said, that is the video. That was Summer Game Fest, at least the things that popped out to me. Let me know in the comments down below, was there anything that you guys saw at the event that caught your eye? And what do you make of Resident Evil Requiem? I am Curious Corduroy. I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.